Hello, welcome back. Today I want to take some time to talk about one of the most complicated skills or just side things that I've ever learned on my own, and that being ham radio. So for those of you that are interested, you may have clicked on this video because you have some questions. What is ham radio? What is the difference between ham radio and other things that you've heard about, what ham radio is capable of, and what is it like, or what do you need in order to be a cool guy carrying around something like this and your kit. Because it's all built around a basic principle that is team comms, team communication, staying in touch with those that you need to stay in touch with whenever the grid goes down, whatever that may be. Because for some people, it may be different. One of the things that I'll pretty much touch on in all my videos is that as citizens, we don't exactly know what we're planning for. And therefore, it makes it sometimes really hard to narrow down exactly everything that we need to get. Ham radio is 100% one of those things. Getting walkie-talkies, getting ham radio, which license do you need to get, which radio do you need to get. It's one of those things where there is really no one radio that is going to accomplish everything for you. So unfortunately, if that was the answer that you're looking for, this is it's not the answer you're going to get. Radios are just all very different. They're all made very unique. There's just things that they do. Some radios do certain things better, and some radios just have really crazy features that others aren't going to have. And it does come down to what you're willing to pay sometimes. So we'll have a little bit of radio noise going on in the background for this video, because I think it's cool and fun, and I want to show a bunch of radios all at once that I'm going to talk about more within this series. So my story, whenever I got into radio, I honestly don't even remember the first time I heard the term ham radio, but it was like someone else who didn't know anything about radio who had said the term ham radio and was like, well, if you want to get into, let's just say, medium distance communications or radio communications at all, you need to get into something called ham radio. And ham radio pretty much means amateur radio, which does in fact take a license to operate on ham radio frequencies. Ham radio, or amateur radio, opens up frequencies that your license permits you to talk on. Whenever we talk about radio, we're talking about a spectrum from one end to the other, and I don't even know all of the entire ham radio spectrum off the top of my head. But it's something like really low frequency that is actually called high frequency, HF bands, super massive radio waves that are like, for example, 80 meters tall, all the way up to stuff that is 460 megahertz, and sometimes higher, I think. And then radios that don't take licenses, like in North America in the 900 megahertz-ish space. A lot of people are using those mesh-tastic devices that operate on LoRa frequencies. It's like the 915 megahertz space, which is what a lot of like security cameras, for example, run off of, and other like, I guess like smart home devices run off of. A much higher frequency compared to relatively low frequency HF, which is called high frequency. And up here, we would have UHF and VHF, which is what you're looking at right here. So if that wasn't confusing enough, my story on how I got into radio, I just heard about it, and then eventually I started to YouTube a lot about it, and I really didn't find a whole lot of answers. There's honestly, if there is one area in YouTube that is like a cesspool and a waste of time and I wouldn't say it's necessarily misinformation, but it's just a bunch of just entertainment content that does nothing more than waste your time. It is looking up videos on radio. So I'm trying to not be that. I'm trying to guide people in a direction in order to work your way up into realizing or figuring out what you need to get to serve your own purposes if you're interested in something like this. That is the purpose of me making this video, and it's one of the main reasons I actually wanted to start making YouTube videos to begin with, was actually to talk about this subject. And it's something that's going to span a series and a couple of videos, but I wanted to go ahead and get the introduction out of the way. That being said, if you are someone who is genuinely considering getting radios that does amateur radio stuff, digital radio, not necessarily digital modes, but digital radio, doing fun stuff, operating on 2 meters, 70 centimeters, working on repeaters, and getting to see and do a lot of cool stuff, you need to get licensed. That being said, don't go on YouTube. Don't waste a bunch of your time looking at videos of people talking about all sorts of ridiculous stuff. The best way, the most efficient way to spend your time is by getting a book and just reading it through. The books are literally meant to teach you, and the license is literally meant to teach you all the stuff that you need to do and answer all your questions. It wasn't until I actually got a book and started to read it till I realized how easy this stuff was, and it just all started to come together and make sense. And that being said, like, I guess I'm not like saying that you have to go out and get this book in particular, but this is the first and only book that I ever bought, and it was just one that I found off of Amazon. And it does a really good job teaching the material. It has the technicians and the general license both in one book. I actually have not gotten to the general license, or I don't have my general license, but I've started the section. As you can see, I haven't marked it up like I have the technician side. And I just marked it up with stuff that is that I want to easily be able to reference and go back to. But like I said, you can get any book that you want. This doesn't have any practice questions in it. It's just all material and has some pictures in there. But this is the one that I would recommend getting. If you're feeling hesitant about it or you're not sure where to go, I would just go on Amazon. I think this book was $20. Just buy it. I read this and got licensed, and that's all it took. So if you're not doing anything, stop and go order this book off of Amazon. I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but this is a little bit of what it looks like. It's really good. There are great illustrations, or at least good illustrations, that taught me. So for that reason, I recommend getting a book. Along with that, if you're going to go ahead and order something, and I don't have it here actually to show because it's in a different place right now. Another thing that I would recommend going ahead and getting in order to be a student, in order to teach yourself and be a student of ham radio, I would go ahead and buy the Notorious Baofeng along with this book. You shouldn't pay any more than $25 for it. Don't get any of the cheap accessories. Get a Baofeng with a charger. And if I were you, I have the Baofeng with the tiny charger. I would actually look at getting the larger one. The tiny charger holds a lot of power, and you can listen for a very long time. But if you're looking into getting into radios in order to, let's say, use one in like gear and kit and a chest rig and a plate carrier or in a backpack, the larger battery makes it a lot easier to hold in pouches, because Baofengs are puny. Baofengs are smaller than, they're not this small, but they're smaller than this. I mean, they're tiny radios, and that battery pack gives you a lot more material to hold into a pouch or something. But you shouldn't pay more than $25, maybe with the extra battery pack, $35 on a Baofeng. The other two items that I forgot to mention that I would highly, highly recommend for those of you that are getting into radio for the first time, and maybe you don't even want to go out and buy a Baofeng, maybe you have a little bit of extra money in your budget, I would recommend getting a scanner. These scanners, this is a Uniden Bearcat, the BC125AT. This is going to scan through frequencies much quicker than a Baofeng ever could imagine. As you can see, it's just absolutely crushing bank number 9, whatever I have this programmed for at the moment. I think where I am at, I'm more like bank 1. You can kind of toggle these on and off for what you want this radio to scan. This could be a very powerful tool when it comes to listening. This is not a radio. There's no push to talk or anything. This is a listening only device. And for example, I can go here to, let's see if I can remember. Those are still my banks. There we go. Pre-programmed. When you get this radio, it will scan common police frequencies, which you won't pick up anything here because I'm pretty sure everyone runs encrypted, trunked stuff. Oh, and fire and ham radio. And the ham radio stuff's really awesome because this is a super easy way to find what repeaters or frequencies are actually being used in your area without you having to scan super slowly through a Baofeng or just rely on a app like Repeater Book, because there might be other stuff that people haven't listed. But this is capable of listening to AM and has a much wider range that it can listen to than a Baofeng. Like we got here, I'll just go through it all. We've got preset marine frequencies, I guess railroad ones, which I usually leave off. Same thing with the marine stuff. I'm not near the ocean. Civil air, which is going to be AM stuff. That can be fun depending on where you are. Military air, I don't normally hear anything on there, so I keep that off normally too. CB radio, don't usually ever hear anything on CB side. And then your FRS, GMRS, and MERS stuff, which just to turn off everything else and show you how quickly this will just destroy these I'm getting out of the picture. It will just destroy these frequencies and just scan through them so fast. And if there's anyone around you in a walkie-talkie, you're going to hear pretty much the entire conversation, which is awesome. So, unit in Bearcat, I think this thing's like $100, and it comes with a programming cable. The only really con to this exact one is I don't think that this is going to be waterproof or dustproof by any means. It also runs off of AA batteries, and if you want it to be rechargeable, you gotta buy the rechargeable ones. That's something nice, but you can throw this in like a plastic bag and try and keep it waterproof. It's got an auxiliary jack for a microphone if you wanted to plug this up to a headset and listen, or earbuds. I do usually like to keep this on my kit or in a backpack or something. And then the very last thing that I forgot to totally mention, whenever you're buying your book, your Baofeng, and you're getting your programming software, the last thing I forgot to mention that you will need, and you'll probably hear on other videos, hold on, this is the wrong one. You will need to get a special programming cable that is not the stock Baofeng one. This is called, great, it's a Merkit is what it is. And sometimes off Amazon, it will be suggested for you to fill this or to put this in your cart. And from what I understand, is pretty much when you plug this into like a Windows computer, because I think it says it's for Windows 10 somewhere on here. It's supposed to install the drivers in your computer that are meant to program the Baofeng radio. That was one of the weirdest things that was so hard to program a Baofeng for the first time, was actually getting the computer to read it and to have the right drivers so that I could actually program the thing. It was pretty frustrating, but actually even with this cable, it was a little challenging, but I've heard if you don't have this cable, it's like nearly impossible. So if you haven't heard that from anywhere else, you've heard it here. Get this cable. I think it's about 20 or $25. It's like the same price as the Baofeng, but your Baofeng is pretty much worthless without this. So pay for it, buy it. It'll do you well. Your book, your radio, and the third thing that I think I'd recommend going ahead and doing is if you have a Windows computer, this is going to be a lot easier. I struggled and couldn't even get this software to ever work on my Mac. So for you Mac guys, just find a Windows computer to do this on. Hopefully you have one nearby. You're going to download a software program called Chirp. And Chirp has gotten so much better than whenever I first got into this stuff 3 or 4 years ago. There's just a lot more compatibility for it. For example, this Wuxen KG 935G radio, I can program on Chirp. And Chirp is pretty much like a standard for programming Chinesium, made in China radios, like this one and like this one. But you can't, this one doesn't do Chirp, to my knowledge. Has its own proprietary software because it's a DMR radio. But I digress. You will download Chirp, and there are some instructions, but you'll pretty much go to, I think it's, and maybe I'll roll this over the video. You'll pretty much click like write to radio, and then you're going to open up a menu and do like load stock configuration, and that will give you a lot of, it'll pretty much load on a bunch of frequently used repeater output frequencies that you can listen to. And so if you download the stock configuration and then scan through it, it might even throw in some weather frequencies, like some NOAA weather frequencies, but you'll go and get an idea. You'll be able to start listening before you even can figure out how to program the radio for yourself. You might not be able to talk because you don't have the thing programmed correctly, but if you do want to program the radio correctly, and for radios that are in your area, the Baofeng's very easy to do. And if you want to program specific repeaters in your area, I would go ahead and get an app on your phone called Repeater Book, and you can filter Repeater Book repeaters through frequency, analog or digital, and a couple other settings, including your location, how far away you are, or how far in the proximity of like maybe the city that you live in. You know, let's just say 25 miles, which is pretty far for most like 2-meter stuff, especially if there are no mountains around and you're in the southeast like me. There's a lot of trees that block those signals. You go ahead and get that, and it will show you exactly the frequencies and the offsets that you need to program your radio to listen into repeaters. And I just realized that I haven't explained what a repeater is, but it's pretty straightforward. It's a radio tower. It's a tower that you talk to from your radio that is a larger, more powerful radio that covers a wider area. You'll learn all about it in your book that you need to go get. So if you start out with your book and you get your Baofeng radio, and the reason that I do recommend the Baofeng is so that while you're reading your book, you have something to play with. The book will actually show you a lot of the settings and explain a lot of things that the Baofeng manual will do, but I think the book will do it better. And while you're learning about it, you can go into the radio that you've programmed with your repeaters and kind of play around with changing things up. You know, what happens when I set the squelch too high? What happens when I set the squelch too low? And you will get to experience and practice with that. And the best way to learn anything, at least for me, is by doing and by getting experience, even if it's just me sitting inside playing with my radio. These radios are pretty much only capable of doing line of sight stuff. This is not really, you're not really going to get any regional communications with these types of radios without any sort of infrastructure. In the case of DMR, you can use the internet and talk hundreds of miles if you have digital repeaters and hotspots near you and the people that you're talking to. For GMRS or other ham radios, if you have repeaters near you, you can push out your distance and you can get more range, more communication. But this isn't going to be anything that is like mind-blowing. You're not going to be talking to people states away with any of this stuff. So just understand that. And now that I'm thinking about it, let me go ahead and explain the difference between ham radio and maybe what you're thinking about whenever you see radios at the store or little walkie-talkies. Like walkie-talkie, radio. What's the difference? This is a Midland radio or walkie-talkie. These operate on what is known as FRS. It's the Family Radio Service. It is a channelized section of the 70 centimeter bands that's been cut out for the use on these radios. It is license free to operate on. There are some regulations. Pretty much you need to have small antennas, and I'll be operating on low power, normally 0.5 watt or less. The reason for this is so the signal doesn't go very far, because whenever people are constantly pressing the microphone and saying all sorts of stuff, you don't want, let's just say we were doing that on a 50 watt radio with a huge antenna. People for miles are going to be able to hear our jibber jabber, and it's going to probably interfere with other people trying to have conversations on their walkie-talkies. That being said, the next service, I guess, you step up to is GMRS. GMRS and FRS share some of the exact same frequencies. Low power GMRS frequencies are the exact same thing as FRS. You normally won't really notice a difference. And you can use GMRS radios to talk on FRS frequencies, no problem. It's really only until you start getting into the higher power channels that are operating on like 5 watts and sometimes are connected to repeaters, do you need to look at getting a GMRS license, where you will pay something like, I want to say $20 now, or maybe it's less than that, to the FCC to get a GMRS call sign, which you will spout out over the air to your buddies and over repeaters. And it is a over-the-air identifier that links your call sign to pretty much your personal information. And that way the FCC can track you and know exactly who you are. I don't really know. I guess. Some people kind of hate the idea of giving their information to more government agencies, but they already know everything about you, so it's okay. Especially if you have a Meta account. So don't worry about it. So you go ahead and get your GMRS license, and you can start operating radios that are something like this, which is a bit more of a ruggedized version of like a GMRS radio. You can program some stuff from the keypad, but when you start working up your way into stuff like this, it's fun. I used to hand these out to family whenever, because they're not licensed, and I still will, before I started to get to stuff like this, which these are the radios that I distribute out to my team or my group of people that I currently do things with. It is good to go ahead and get your GMRS license. It does open up some capabilities for you if you know there are GMRS repeaters in your area. That is the one thing about the GMRS service. It's relatively new-ish, and people don't have a ton of repeaters that are available. It really depends on where you live. But if you go towards the mountains or national parks or campsites, sometimes there are more. And so if you live out somewhere like that, you might find that going ahead and paying for the GMRS license so you can get on the air and do fun stuff might be worth your time and your money. I ended up getting my ham radio license, and then I went ahead and bought a GMRS license for the family. The ham radio technician's license is going to open up a lot more stuff for you and a lot more capable radios, and you'll get to go ahead and invest your money into some things that you can start playing with. But yeah, just to wrap it up, I wanted to go ahead and say that in this series I will be talking about what radios I've used in the past, how I have set them up on different pieces of gear, and what I have found that works and doesn't work. I also would like to have some content about maybe programming radios, what I've learned with these new ones that are freaking awesome. And you may have seen some people online running the Tailor radios. They're, in my experience so far, so nice and really worth the money for them. You do have to buy these secondhand, but they're usually just as much as something like this brand new. At least in my case, what I paid for them. All right. All that being said, I hope that you continue watching this series. I hope that answered maybe some questions about what the heck, what do I do to get started? And the first, and really the first stepping stone is getting a notorious Baofeng UV5R. Don't get anything else weird. Don't get any other accessories. Get the radio, the charger it comes with, I say XL battery. Go ahead and get a book and start reading. If it's something you're interested in, just jump the gun on it and just start reading. Don't watch any YouTube videos tonight. Don't waste your time. Just read the material. I beg. I wasted so much time just watching just brain rot on YouTube, trying to get someone to teach me it when I realized the book was all I needed. Thanks for watching. Please comment what you do like, comment what you would like to see in the future. And all that being said, be safe and take care.